Hello and welcome to another episode of Fire 5 at Phoenix. So we are live, we're recording this live. I'm joined today by Vicky Price. And so if you've not watched any of these before, it's a very simple concept. I'm joined each week by a guest. That guest brings with them 5 questions on the topic that we are covering this month. So this month, brand new month, new theme, we are talking about change. It's obviously a huge subject, huge topic area to cover. And I will have 4 guests over the course of the month. Each of them will be bringing 5 questions that I have not seen. And we will see what happens with the answers and any conversation that comes up as a result. So, as I said, I am joined today by Vicky. Vicky, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and your business as well.
Yeah, hi, really nice to be here. So my business is creative communications, and I work with business owners with on their marketing. So I help them communicate and connect with their audiences and grow their audiences. And it's quite varied. It's anything from working with people setting up their social media management. I also like working with them on their visibility across all the different channels. And or I go into businesses and look at their marketing and help support them with their marketing. I've been in business 18 months, so my background's in marketing, but I took a break to bring up children. So coming back in it, I'm still very much learning and adapting, and my business keeps changing. So every time I'm asked to explain what I do, it changes slightly. So I'm really working hard on it at the moment to get to the real kind of my favorite offerings, really, I think. I'm also single parent with, I have 5 children and a big family, 4 at home with me. And I've got, so I also connect with other single mum business owners, because being a business owner is quite a journey and it's quite a challenge, and doing it by myself whilst bringing up a family and running the household and everything has its own challenges. So I found when I started out in business that I was kind of looking for people who were like me, who were doing it as well, because, like a lot of business owners, I get that sometimes I think, am I mad? Is this going to work? Can I actually do this? And then as the kind of one income family, it's like, is this really sustainable? So I've got a Facebook group with other single mum business owners that provides kind of support, and we can talk about things, and because we often have different challenges than those who are maybe without children or who are in partnerships. And yeah, that's me.
So lots of change mentioned in that, and from my perspective, marketing and especially sort of digital social media marketing is changing all of the time. So there's a constant change there, and I would imagine with 4 children at home, you have lots of change and lots of different changes and different dynamics going on in your home as well. So, and I what you're saying about that sort of single parent, running businesses certainly resonates with me as well. So I am intrigued as to where the conversation is going to take us this morning, because we have lots in common, but I think there's also lots to talk about as well. So you have 5 questions for me on the subject of change.
I do, and I'm going to keep it mostly personal, actually, because I've been through lots of different changes in my life at different stages. And a few years ago, the big one was, being in a relationship, being at home with my children. I wasn't working. I was also home educating my children at the time. So it was a choice rather than being forced to do it, as we've done this last year. And I knew that the relationship wasn't going to work, and I had to leave. And I was faced with no job, children at home, hadn't worked for a while. And so before I made that decision, it was huge, and I was scared, and I was scared of the change that was going to happen and what I was going to have to do. So if you'd met me back then, where I was in a place of knowing life wasn't right, really quite unhappy, knowing I had to make huge changes to actually make it work by myself, supporting 4 children, and I'd come to you, what would be the one thing you would have said to me?
I think the first thing I would ask is what will stay the same, because I think sometimes change just feels really big, doesn't it? And I think that we look for where the gaps are, we look for where the differences are. And I think sometimes there's a real benefit to reflecting on what will stay the same, but also what is transferable. So what won't be exactly the same, but what will be similar. So, you know, knowing what I know and about you and from what you've just described there, even with a change like that, which is a big, significant change, there will be lots in there that will still be familiar, will still be similar, you'll have lots of transferable skills that you will be able to mold and reshape slightly to make them work in the new world. So I think that's probably where I would start to ask you, okay, there's lots of change here, but what will still be the same? What might look different, but might feel the same? You know, so sometimes we do home in on what's different, but sometimes there's lots of similarities and lots of things that feel familiar, even if they are slightly different. So I think that would be where I would start. I don't know whether that would that have helped at the time, do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was working with a coach at the time, and but that was never said to me. I've not heard that, like what would be the same. I think that would have really, because it felt at the time like everything was changing. You know, I knew I was going to have to put my children into school. It was going to be from being a stay-at-home mum with them all the time to starting work, to putting them in school, to finding a home. We moved cities as well. We moved from London to Bristol. So it was like everything in our life changed. So to have been told, to have had a conversation around what would stay the same, I'd have found some real comfort in that. Because it felt like I had to change everything in all of their lives. And that would have been really helpful, actually. I like that.
And that when you ask the question, and when we talk about change, quite often the snow globe analogy is what comes up for a lot of people. And I think it's a great analogy in that, you know, if we are in that snow globe, sometimes we shake it and we disrupt things, and sometimes the world or something outside of ourselves shakes it and disrupts things. But if it's us and it's our snow globe, we know the picture that's in it. So you might not be able to see too far in front of you. You might not be able to see the big picture, but there's certain things that you know are inside that snow globe that once everything settles will still be the same. And something that I quite often work through with people is asking them what their internal resources are. So who are you and what do you know about yourself that will help you through this change? Because even if everything else around you is changing, you are still you with the tools and the experience and the resources that you have. So what do you know about you that will help you through this? Because you're taking you through that change, and you'll learn and you'll evolve and you'll grow without a doubt. But you're still, the core is still there. And so quite often when we reflect and we understand who we are and what our resources are to help us through this change, we can then look to see where the gaps are, to see, okay, where can we utilize some external resources to help support us? And that would be different dependent on the change, I guess, but certainly, you know, the internal resources, who we are, the skills we have, the experience that we have, the characteristics that we have, that we know will help us through it. So sometimes the snow globe is really blurry, but we know what the picture is inside it. We just have to wait for it to settle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. I love the snow globe analogy. It's I think knowing that, and I probably did know this, it's just being said differently. It's kind of not knowing how, I think I've kind of forgotten a bit about how resilient I actually was and how much I can achieve. And that's the one thing it did do, by actually making those changes and doing it. And I guess we're 2 years on in July. We moved here in August 2019. having that in my life now, that knowing, wow, I did that, I can pretty much do anything, is so empowering. And I've heard that said a few times. There's a lot of quotes we see about kind of at the start of the journey, when you get to the other side, and there's something amazing waiting at the other side. It's very hard to trust that at the time, but knowing that it is, and knowing that I've done it, it's given me huge kind of faith in the fact that I can actually make anything happen in my life, knowing I had that resilience.
And it's those are the internal resources, all of the experiences that you've had up until this point. How will you be able to use those to help you through this next stage or this next step? And I think sometimes we feel like what we're facing is new, and it is new because it's different. But we faced other things, and we might have used our characteristic, we might have used the same tools that will help us with this, and all of those experiences count, and so it's using those I think so, to go back to the question of knowing what will still be the same, knowing where you can use what you have and who you are to help yourself through it, and that sometimes gives you the confidence, knowing that you've got that resilience to be able to take those first steps, and the rest, each step you work out as you take them, don't you? But it's the first step is always the more difficult one, I think.
Definitely, yeah, it was. It kind of leads on to my second question, if you're ready for that.
Yeah.
So I remember my oldest son, when I remember getting to a stage in life where I was thinking kind of like, I had my house, I had my one child, I had a job, and when this was in my 20s, and I'm like, okay, I'm there now. I remember always wanting a feeling of stability, and like life was, I got it, I understand life, I'm there. But actually, as I've got older, I've realized that's just not there. We're constant change. I've had some quite big things happen in my life. I had my sister passed away 6 years ago. I've had a lot of children that I didn't I didn't plan for a big family. I've had I've been a single mom twice, with my oldest son, and then with these ones. In life, it's almost like we get complacent, like, oh, here we are. So like, I've moved here. It's like, oh, I've got my job, I've got my house, we're all good. And I don't know what's coming in the future. Like, change is inevitable, but I think we avoid it. We don't expect it. And so what would you say about living day to day, not knowing what's coming and not being prepared? We can't prepare for it, but how do we go about our day-to-day lives with that kind of not knowing what's around the corner? I mean, we've just been through a year of lockdown. Who knew this was coming?
Yeah.
And I think
that's a great question. I'm like, there's two things that pop up for me. First is the that acceptance mindset, that we accept that change is inevitable. We create our own change. Sometimes change is created by external sources, or situations create change for us. So it's that acceptance that change is always going to happen. And I think for me, the appreciation and gratitude of all things that are good in this moment really helps with that, of being just really enjoying the good things in the moment, and that gratitude and appreciation for things that you want to hold on to, things that you want more of, things that you enjoy about having in life, that you I think we have to, things aren't a given, so sometimes we have to work quite hard for things that we appreciate and things that we are grateful for. And I think for me it's the recognition that this is important to me, this is what I want to keep hold of. So if other things change around it, these are the things that I want to fight for, if you like. If these are the things that I don't want to lose, this is what's important to me. But I think also the second part of that is almost looping back to that first question of the confidence that you have the resources to deal with what happens. Yes, it might be tough. It probably will be tough. It will be difficult. It will be challenging. But when you reflect on things that have happened to you and the fact that you are here now with that sense of gratitude and appreciation for the life that you have now, knowing what you've been through in the past, it's almost, for me, it's like that little voice at the back of my head that says, you know, whatever happens, you'll work through it. You'll get through it. You've got through A, B, and C. You'll get through D, E, and F, and further down the line, the rest of the alphabet that will probably go through to Z, and then start back at A again, because that's kind of what life is about. And you know, I know we've talked in other episodes about, you know, the ups and the downs are really important, because that's what makes life, and you make the most of the ups and you work through the downs, but that's when you grow, that's when you evolve, that's when you really learn about what's important, and your resilience and capability and confidence and all of those things. So I think there's the gratitude and appreciation of where you are now, but also knowing that inner confidence that you will work through and you will get through whatever happens, when it happens, if it happens. Because that's the question, isn't it? It's not a guaranteed that it will happen. So it's having that I guess, knowing that the acceptance that it might happen, but not worrying about what it will be, when it will come, and how you'll work through it, because we can just enjoy where we're at the moment.
It feels like there needs to be a balance between that, like you said, enjoying our lives and feeling kind of alive and happy and positive, and whilst being aware that, yeah, it's fine. That's the bit I'm questioning, I guess, is not worrying about what might happen, because there's no point in that. Yeah, not getting complacent in our lives where we think nothing bad's going to happen now, and especially as a business owner, where there is no security there, you know, and my business is doing really well at the moment, but with the pandemic, and it actually got better during the pandemic, because I'm digital marketing. A lot needed my services, so I was one of those kind of in those areas where we did really well this year. But then I started thinking, the longer this goes on, and the more businesses that you know, long-term effects on small businesses, and where they have to cut back, and will this, so I had these fears over kind of, will it actually affect my business in the long run? Will people stop dropping away, or will there be more and more people doing what I do, because it's, you know, it's a really valid sort of area to go into at the moment, therefore there'll be much more competition, and then, you know, and it's kind of, in my business, things are going really well. I always have a kind of abundance and positive mindset that there's plenty of work for us all out there. I've got some really great colleagues who do what I do, and there's no competition. There's plenty of work. However, every now and then you get that, but what if this happens again? What if we go into another lockdown? What if people, you know, and so it's keeping that kind of positive on a day-to-day, whilst being, I don't know, open-minded about change, but not worrying about change. Would it be that?
Yeah, I think that's why, for me, acceptance is such a great word, because it's the acceptance that change will eventually happen. It might be a really positive change that we welcome. It might be a change that we want to work through and is more uncomfortable. I mean, Mark has commented in the chat there about motivation and how our motivations change and how they're influenced. And, you know, I think that's a big part of it. You know, we will be motivated and influenced, and those experiences will feel different at different times, and you know, they'll feel different for different people as well. You know, what's a comfortable and welcome change for you in your situation and with your business might be quite uncomfortable and unwelcome for somebody else. So, you know, we all react and respond to things very differently. So I think that's the knowing what's, you know, when you are happy, when you are fulfilled, knowing what it is that's doing that helps you to know what you're holding on to when other things happen around you. Of, I guess, you know, to go back to the snow globe analogy, it's what do you want glued down? What do you absolutely want glued down? That even if the the landscape changes, that those are the things that you always want to be in place.
See, actually, what I thought when you were talking then, I noticed that when I think of change, I think of bad things, rather than all the good changes, because obviously our brains are wired to look for, trouble on the horizon rather than good things on the horizon. But actually, there's so many. The big change I made by moving from London to Bristol and leaving the relationship and being, setting up a new life for my children was actually a really positive change.
Yeah.
Even though at the time it felt like this enormous mountain that I had to sort of, climb to get to the top of. And so it had both those things at once, even though it was absolutely scary and I was really scared. I was very scared. I really didn't know if I could do it. On the other hand, there was no choice in it. It was like, I have to make this work. So that really drove me along. So it was a really positive change at the same time. But yeah, I don't focus on what positive changes are coming. I always kind of look for, I'm like prepared for the bad.
But even with that example, it's a positive change can feel uncomfortable because it's the change itself can feel uncomfortable, even though we know the outcome at the end of that change will be a positive. So I've always said that one of my favorite sayings is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it means that you're moving and growing and evolving, and so that's exactly what you've just described is such a great example of that. It's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, it feels big, but it's a positive.
That's such a, I've said to a few people recently that running my own business is like the biggest personal development program I've ever been through, and constantly kind of always feeling uncomfortable. And whenever I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm learning now that means I'm transitioning, I'm going through something, and I'm going to come out the other side better. And but it's there quite consistently for me. It is. I am getting more used to it. I used to have really run away from that. If I was feeling like, I would do anything to avoid it. But now I'm learning to embrace it, because I know that it means something good's going to happen.
And I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Is when we get so far forward and we get to that place where we want to retreat back to what is familiar and what is comfortable, that's the difference, isn't it? When we push through that barrier and keep going, and then we get to the next level, and then we sit there for a little bit. We're like, this is great. We appreciate, we have that gratitude. And then we're like, okay, what's next? What do I need to do to push through to the next level? And that's that evolution, isn't it? Of how we grow and how we develop. But it's that pushing through and fighting that urge to retreat back to what's familiar and what's comfortable, because that doesn't necessarily mean that's what is best for us to be able to move forward.
Okay, so my next question is about our children. So we bring our children up and we want them to feel safe and secure in their world, in their environment, in their home with us. How do we prepare them for change and possibly big changes, whilst keeping them safe, secure, and knowing the world's a good place? I had, like I've mentioned before, I had a sister pass away 6 years ago. She had children. No, they didn't see that coming. It's anything can happen in life. We don't know. How do we? I think that really showed me about bringing them up and knowing that supporting them through. They've got their own changes that happen. They left friends behind. We may move again, and they may have to move schools at some point. So wanting them to know that life's really great and secure, and feel that safety, whilst building a resilience in them, that if a big change does happen, that they have the tools to cope with it. That's quite a big question.
I think one of the toughest challenges as a parent as well. It's to for me, as a parent, we are the external resource to our children. And for us, our role as a parent is to help them to grow and develop their internal resources. So that resilience, that confidence, for them to know that they have the tools and resources to deal with what happens. But we will always be that external resource that's the support, the guide, the comfort, the reassurance, all of those things that we do as parents. I saw my sister, nephews and nieces at the weekend. Thank you for allowing us back in and being able to congregate in gardens again and having good weather to be able to do that. And we were talking about, so my son turned 19 last week. Her children are still much younger. And we were having a conversation, her husband, myself and my son, we were having a conversation about, where they are at their stage in their children's lives, and how I am as a parent with my son now at that later stage. And we were talking about how do you know when to step in, when to step back, and she's got 3 children to work this through with, whereas I only had to do it the once. So and she said that she had heard Davina McCall talking about how when our children get to their teen years, that it's like a tunnel. So what she was saying is that we can't go through the tunnel with them, that essentially we have to trust and reassure ourselves that we have given them everything that they need to get through this tunnel, and that we will be there at the other side when they come through it. But through their teenage years, they're in this tunnel, they experience life, and that we have to trust that they are through this tunnel. And I said, for me, it's always felt like for me as a parent, in my experience, it's like training him for Tough Mudder. It's like the all of those early growth years of those, the times where we step in as a parent, when we tell them what they need to do, where we tell them what danger is, we tell them where the risks are, that all of that is helping them to be able to identify it for themselves. And then as they get a little bit older, it's that slight step back of helping, or not testing them, but helping them to test what they know and what they understand, and sometimes they get it wrong. And I think that's the hardest part, when you start to transition in that relationship with your children as they get older, of taking that step back and watching them make mistakes, to learn from them, to grow from them, but taking that little bit of a step back and not jumping in, because it's so hard to do. Because that's where they learn, and that's where they're adding to their toolkit of internal resources. And so I said, for me, those teenage years, and now going into adulthood, as mine now it feels like parenting is like training them up for Tough Mudder, that you don't know what the assault course is going to be. So you have to give them that training, that is that very broad training, that whatever each obstacle is, that they have that their own confidence and their own trust in themselves to be able to get through over that obstacle. And that we then, as a parent, we're standing at the sides, giving them, we might shout out some guidance, we might shout out some words of encouragement, words of support. They know that we're always there. They know we're going to be waiting for them at the finishing line, but they have to get through it themselves. And so I think, that tunnel analogy, or for me, the Tough Mudder analogy is, it is very hard, I think, as a parent, and having, as a single parent, not to jump in and do it for them, and to not jump in and fix things for them each and every time, and knowing when to do that and when not to do that. And that's so tough. And it is trial and error for us as much as it is for them. But, as humans, we learn and we grow and we evolve, and we can't do that for them. And I think when we try to do that for them, we're preventing, in my opinion, we are stopping them from putting tools in their toolbox, because we are using our tools from our toolbox to fix their problems, whereas they need to use their tools in their toolbox to fix their challenges. And I think that's a constant, isn't it? As they grow, it's different challenges, different fixes, different ways of working through it. But that's where they learn, and they then get more confident to deal with things as and when they happen. And yeah, as Mark's just commented, getting the balance of challenge and support is probably the most difficult challenge, but it is also, I think, as a parent, one of the most important roles that we play.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think it's very easy to do everything for our children, isn't it? And I go through phases where I have done that, and I try and take a step back a lot of the time now, and realizing that, because it's me and them a lot of the time, especially this last year, it's mainly been me and them. I've had very little support because my family can't help in the way they were helping before the pandemic. Yeah. And hopefully they will be able to be back involved again. But just wanting to, and I've got teens, so I've got a grown-up son and I've got teens, so I am starting to see, I've got a 16-year-old, her heading, she's in GCSE year, she was having to choose her what to do next year in September. Yeah. And I very much kind of took a step back and said, you need to sort this out. And I did have to kind of step in a bit when you say, give her some guidance there as to just keep your options open, try to a couple of things, but she then actually just went off and did it. And I was really proud of her, because it's like, she didn't ask me to do it. She was ended up very capable of doing it. And I've given her some tools. That's great, knowing that it's such a relief where you can see them doing things. You think, because it's a big, I always say to them now, I'm preparing you to be an adult. Yeah. So when I'm not making you lunch, because one of mine does complain that I'm not a proper mum if I don't make lunch, even though she's old enough to do it, I say to her, I am giving you the tools here to look after yourself, because if I'm not here, you need to look after yourself. Or as you get older, you need this as well. But she really resists it. Actually, it's another interesting, leading on from that, my children resist growing up. I remember when I was young, I couldn't wait to be an adult, or I couldn't wait to be sort of an older teenager and to be out in the world and doing my thing. And I've noticed with all of my children, my oldest as well, this real resistance of going into the adult world, whether life's changed so much and it's become such a burden, there is so much responsibility or so much fear, I don't know what it is, that they're actually really resisting that now.
It's interesting, isn't it? And it would be interesting to know what it is that they are resisting, what the fear is of that moving into that adult world. And that's where the support and reassurance comes in, isn't it, of the parents of, we will, for as long as we are here, we will be here in that supporting role, we'll always be there to offer guidance. We will always be there. Even in my 40s, there are still times where you want to ring your parents and you want to ask for their advice or their support, or you want to talk things through. That doesn't, it changes, the dynamic changes, but that part of that role doesn't ever go away. And so it's interesting, isn't it, as our children grow up, that this is not us stepping away, this is us stepping aside so that you can step into the next part of your journey, because we can't do this for you. We can't always roll our sleeves up and do this for you. That's part of that growing up, is that you learn to do this for yourself. That doesn't mean that we won't be here, to still be able to play a role. It's just the role will be very different. But I think that's a challenge for some young people. It's also a challenge for a lot of parents. That's a big part of who they are. It's a big part of identity, in being that person, being in that role, that starting to take steps back from that more sort of hands-off parenting approach, and giving your children space to grow and evolve and learn the tools and skills that they need, that's a real challenge for parents too. So it's I think it's just looking at what sits behind that fear. What is the resistance? What are they resisting? What are you as a parent resisting in, what do you need to let go of to be able to help to make this happen?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as a big family with a single parent with a big family, they don't have much choice other than to kind of step up a little bit. And also, I've got an adult child, and I've got a 6-year-old, and everything in between. And for me, the letting go is I'm happy to let go of some of it. It's been, I can understand that. I remember when my eldest got to 18, I felt this huge relief, like, oh my God, thank God for that. He's 18 now, he can look after himself. And now I've got, a 16-year-old,
yeah,
who, a year and a half away from being kind of 18. I just think, oh, that'll be another one tick of relief.
Yeah.
Got her there.
It's part of that. You feel that success as a parent, don't you? You've got them to adulthood, and they're good, good, healthy head, healthy body, people who you've grown them from, you've grown them into a person that can now go and live the life they want to live. That's just such a big part of it. But there's also that letting go, and that, that the permission to then let them go and make those decisions. And it's that the hands-off parenting the distance becomes even more, doesn't it? So there's lots to celebrate within that. And it's an interesting time.
Yeah. Let's see, I had one more question, definitely one more possible. Okay, yeah. I mean, this is just sort of slightly off the topic, and what it kind of goes on from our children going into the adult world. I mean, for me at the moment, the world is changing at the most rapid pace, where I've had conversations with people, and I'm like, I don't understand things anymore. I don't understand the world and where we're going. And there's all sorts of kind of information out there that we can access to try and work out what's going on in the world, from all sorts of theories and everything. And how do we plan our futures? Like, I work with coaches where we're looking at what's my life going to look like in 10 years time? And we're planning those futures, and we're working back. I mean, how do we do that? And do we have to become even more adaptable in a time where, we've been brought up one way, and actually I don't recognize a lot of what's going on anymore. And that's happening very quickly.
Yeah.
So how do we plan our futures in such a hugely changeable landscape?
Well, I may not be the best person to ask that question, because I don't plan ahead. I never have done. So I'm not always the best person to answer that question, but I guess it does give a different answer to the people that have 5 and 10-year plans. It's just not something I've ever done. I've had a general idea of the direction that I want to move in, but in terms of planning how to get there, it's not something I have ever felt that I had, and it's not something I've ever done or chosen to do, because actually not planning ahead in a great amount of detail has always worked well for me, because I've had an idea of the direction that I want to move in. But for me, not having a really set plan and set milestones over 5 and 10-year periods means that I can seize opportunities as and when they come up, if they are part of what's heading in the right direction. So, I know that when I've worked with people, so working with clients, in that coaching role, there are some people who do have 5 and 10-year plans, and that's great. We can start from the, where we're heading, and we can plan back, not a problem. But there's also lots of people who really struggle with that and actually want to work in 12 months at a time and work back from it. And some people it's just 3 months. So I tend to have 12 months, what do I want to achieve over the next 12 months? And I will break it back down, but I only ever plan in detail 3 months at a time. So that's why I don't think you can see, because we're on a shared screen. But the brown paper in my office for planning at the moment is blank, because we're just starting a new quarter. So I know which direction I'm heading in, but in terms of the detail of how I'm going to get there, that comes in 3 months at a time. I think from my perspective, and a lot of the conversations that I'm having at the moment, especially with young people, is that things are changing so very quickly. And even, you look at the young people who are choosing exam options or choosing university options, the world is changing at such a pace at the moment that even some of the roles that they might go into don't exist yet. You think the thing when you went into employment, when I went into employment, some of the jobs that are there at the moment, they didn't exist 20 years ago. But things and technology and science is moving at such a fast pace that if you're looking at that environment, there are roles that don't exist yet. So the important thing for me is to know what's important to you, know what you get the most enjoyment from, to know what your vision is of what do you want from life in general. What are the things that you're passionate about? What are the things that you are good at? What are the things that you love to do? And work on that. And I think when you have that grounded and you have an idea of what you want from life, that it makes the selection of things to choose from much more open, but it's still grounded with who you feel you are as a person and what's important to you. And so even though we change and we grow, a lot of that stays very similar, doesn't it? It evolves with us, but the things that are important to us now are probably things that were important to us when we were younger. It just changes shape slightly, but the core values are very similar. So I think that's the important thing of, the Japanese ikigai, the finding your purpose, the things that you're good at, the things that you love, the things that you can be paid for, the things that the world needs that you feel is important, that you can contribute to. They're all really important to identify. And most of the time, the decisions that we make fit within that and what our core values are. And, motivation, Mark has mentioned, those are the things that understanding what's important to us as an individual helps us to set the direction. That the planning and the detail, that can come at any time, I think.
I think what I'm hearing quite a lot through this whole conversation is, there's coaches I've worked with, and I have clients who very much look at the kind of what's going on out there is always going to change going out there. What's going on in here is the important bit, and we all choose to see the world from our own perspective. So it's like an inside out thing. So actually, humanity, even though the world is changing at an enormous pace on one level, humanity hasn't changed a great deal. And actually all the core of all the human experience and the emotion and being, emotional, I guess, developing good emotional intelligence, resilience in us, and real kind of trust and faith, positivity mindset is the work we should all be doing. Because actually, and it's a shame, isn't it, that our children, when I look at the school and what they're learning in school, and it's starting to look, I mean, I chose to home educate originally for a good reason. I had a reason to, and then they went into school because single parent, I have to work. I didn't have the facilities to do that anymore. But it means we've seen it from two sides, and seeing what the national curriculum teaches now, I'm like, they're not, it's becoming almost defunct, it's ridiculous. It's like the way the world's going and what they need, I mean, resilience and working on their core values and who they are as really strong individuals seems to me what we need to teach our children. And the nuts and bolts of how they then do those jobs, they will pick up as they go along, because it's all those kind of skills they're picking up anyway because they're in the world. So yeah, it's about, I mean, I always know this, and I forget. It's nice to be reminded of it. I forget that we're in the world, and I often feel very reactive to what's ever going on around me. But actually, having this conversation and other conversations I've had reminds me it's always back with us, and focusing on that important bit, and then trying to pass that on to my children.
Yeah.
Because they're very much reactive to what's going on out there, and especially to each other.
Yeah, and that is a challenge, isn't it? I mean, that's a conversation I've heard lots of, that is a conversation I have had a lot, especially in the last 12 months, when the world is changing around you and you do feel that things are not in your control, that the changes that are happening are not in your control. We still have control of how we show up every day. We still have control of the conversations that we have and who we are as a person and how we behave as a person, how we respond as a person. We still have full control over that. And I think that sometimes we just need to bring that attention back in of, the world is changing. The way the world works is changing. How I wake up and how I show up for myself and my son and my business and my family each day, I still have full control over.
Yeah, I love that. It's actually really simple, isn't it? When we think these problems are so big and everything, it's all so big, but actually it's really, really simple. It is about ourselves. And that's one thing I try and I do talk to my children about and like arrows with you, only you have, and how you react. And, I try and teach them about taking responsibility, even if their sibling punches them first. They have a choice in how they react to that.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that all you can do is, like you say, is do the best you can with them young. And when they go into the world, hope that something has stuck.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? If the world is changing, so are the tools that we're putting in their toolbox, are they the tools that they need to go out and work their way through the world? And I think there are certain tools that, regardless of how the world changes, those tools will still be needed. I think the more tools that we can give them, the better, because ultimately we don't want to send them out with one or two tools in the toolbox. So the more we can support them through their experiences so that they learn the tools and they put the tools into their toolbox, rather than reaching us, either us using our tools or that they are using our tools to sort it, then the better they are equipped to go out and face all of the challenges and changes that life has, and hopefully then find them less uncomfortable and more positive than perhaps if they go out into the world with a hammer and a screwdriver that doesn't fit very much.
I love these metaphors. My last question for you is, as a business owner, and so I'm going to go do my work as a digital marketing person, I struggle to keep up with everything that's going on, and often I don't want to do the things that I'm supposed to do to so the algorithms show me to as many people as possible, all of that. How do you cope with a business, which we're all online at the moment, so everything we do is through this space? How do you cope with the ever-changing world of having to kind of market yourself and let people know about who you are and what you do?
I try and keep it simple. For I think that's probably the main thing. I think it's just the digital marketing platforms are a place or space for people to find you. So people will show up or will use different platforms. I think I'm still me, just on different platforms. So I just keep it simple, and it's a tough one because it is forever changing. I do think that it's always been important for me to not pay too much attention to what other people are doing, because other people are not me. And there are other things that some people this is comfortable for me. Having live conversations, having live, chats, video calls, taking live questions from people, that's comfortable for me. But I know that not everybody would feel comfortable doing that. Recorded videos, the reels, the music and the dancing, not so much. So I'm not going to worry about what other people are doing. I have key messages that I want to be able to get across. I want to use the platforms to connect with people and to be able to engage, and for people hopefully to take away information that is useful to them. That's my kind of key, I guess that's my sort of priority in all of this, is how can I reach people? How can I get information out there that is useful to people? And how can I engage? And that all of the platforms do that in very different ways. So it's finding the ones, for me, just keeping it simple in knowing that the message will reach the people who are looking for it, but not getting too hung up in how it's done. Just because there's something that is new out or a new platform is out, that if it's not something that's in alignment with how I want to work, then I'm not getting too hung up about the fact that everybody else is on a new platform if it doesn't work for me and how I want to get information out there. So, but there's just so much, isn't there, all of the time, and different age groups being on different platforms, and that there is maybe an expectation to be on top of all of these things, but ultimately, I don't know, I'd kind of stay in my lane and watch where I'm going, rather than get too distracted by what other people are doing in other lanes, because that isn't necessarily helpful for me.
It's a balance, isn't it? Because if your audience all start being in a different space, then you kind of have to adapt to that space.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing this with business owners. There's a lot of kind of resistance to having to, I've got to learn how to do this one. I've got to be able to do reels, or I've got to do TV, or I better get over to Clubhouse because, and I try and stay on top of it so that I can see what's going on, to see what's important and what really needs to happen. But it is a tough one, because we get comfortable with certain ways of doing it, and then it changes again, and it's like, oh, now we've got, this is, if you're talking about change, this is an enormous one of having to constantly adapt to, we've got to do video, like, you're comfortable, but so many people I work with aren't comfortable doing video. And I, myself included, I at the end of last year, that was one of the big things that I said to myself, is okay, I've really got to look at my visibility, and I set that intention. And so at first, being recorded like this would have just I really would have resisted it. And the more I do it, the more comfortable it actually doesn't bother me now. But so many people do resist that. And it's I don't know. Again, I guess it's getting outside of our comfort zone again, isn't it? It's within limits of staying authentic to who we are still.
Exactly. And that's the balance, isn't it? Of pushing through, knowing when to push through, and knowing when actually doing nothing is the right course of action. Not changing is sometimes the best course of action. And it is having that confidence in knowing when to do that.
Yeah, there's so many distractions as a business owner, aren't there?
Yeah.
What you should be doing.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think there are certain platforms that work well for me in how I, in what I want to do, and there are other platforms that don't. And I think is finding which platforms work best for you, but also where are the people who you want to connect with and you want to engage with, where are they? But yes, that is certainly something that is has a very quick evolution, doesn't it? That very quick, lots and lots of change in very short periods of time. And I think just for me, it's just about keeping it simple and finding a couple of platforms that work well and working with it. And if that changes, if the results of what I'm doing change, then I will look to change what I'm doing. But for the moment, there's opportunities, but that doesn't mean they all need to be taken, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's my approach when I work with clients is keep it simple, start small, and then get comfortable with something, and then we can build on that. But if you try and do everything at once, and even as you know, trying to plan that, it's just, you know, it's like a difficult maths equation. You're just like, what goes where first? And so, yeah, it's keeping it manageable and doable, and then usually then it kind of takes some traction. You get on a roll with something, so you can kind of put something else into the mix.
Yeah.
At first, it can overwhelm people, and there's too much.
And then it defeats the object, then, doesn't it? Because you do nothing.
Yeah,
try and do everything and end up doing nothing.
People run away and they don't do anything, and then they come to me and go, "Can you do it for me?"
Yeah, exactly that. So that I lost count about half an hour ago. So is that five questions?
Yeah, that was 5 questions. Yeah, and they did kind of naturally lead into them to each other. So yeah,
really interesting questions, and it's nice to. I mean, this is what I love about these conversations, is that because the guest brings in the questions, it always adds a very different dynamic, because the questions tend to be focused around what's important to the guest that comes in. So it's been a really interesting conversation today, and hopefully within the answers there's been information there that is helpful to people. So thank you so much. Thank you very much for your time today. We will put some information in as to where people can find you. We will put this out across the platforms so that people can watch back. Thank you to those who have joined the conversation and joined in the conversation. It's fantastic, always nice to see. But we will be back next week with another episode. Please do feel free to like, share, subscribe. If you have heard things within the conversation today that you think would be beneficial to people please do pass it on, help us to get that information out there. But Vicky, thank you so much for your time today. Fantastic questions. Great conversation.
Yeah, it was really good fun. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. And we will be back next week with another episode, another new guest, and 5 more questions. Thank you.
Bye.